Hello pen people, here we are again talking about pens. Particularly today we're talking about Diplomat as I work through my catalog of pens, A to Z, and I'm on the D's. So Diplomat has been around for a little over 100 years. They opened in 1922. And on their website they say that they make pens with, and quote, a wide variety of metals, elaborate manufacturing processes, and sophisticated mechanics, all handmade. Well, I think that depends on what you consider handmade. But anyway, they make a lot of different kinds of pens. Particularly, I'll be talking about fountain pens mostly, but I will mention their ball pens for briefly. I have this little ballpoint pen from them. I call it the lipstick pen just because, you know, it goes out kind of the way one of those old style lipsticks does. It's called the Grip, and it's just a ball pen that I picked up like 30 years ago. It's a long time. Anyway, the way it works is it's got a little ballpoint refill that fits inside here, and there's a little cone that holds it in place, and it extends and retracts. One of the things that's interesting to me about Diplomat's ballpoint pens is they have a line called Space Tech, which is really similar to Fisher's pens. In fact, here I have a Fisher ballpoint pen, if I can open it. It's just a clicky, rubber-coated pen with a Fisher pressurized refill in it. Now, this is a Fisher. It's made in the United States by Fisher, but there is a Diplomat version that's nearly identical to it. But it's marked all over it, Space Tech. And the refills are pressurized, but they are not made by Fisher. They're made by Schmidt for Diplomat. And in my experience, those Schmidt refills are not nearly as good as the Fisher ones are. Your mileage may vary. It just, you know, may be my limited experience, but I prefer Fisher. I don't know what the relationship between Fisher and Diplomat is, whether or not at one point Fisher had a contract with Diplomat or not. But there is a line of Diplomat pens that are identical to the Fisher ones. Anyway, let's talk about the fountain pens. Now, I have two of them here. Now, they have other fountain pens like the Excellence A and a bunch of others. These are just the two I happen to have. So these are the Diplomat Aeros. This one is called the Factory Finish, and this one is called the Flame Finish. Now, it might be useful just sometimes when you have a review like this, somebody will say, oh, look, I have a couple of pens that are the same. We'll just talk about this one. Well, in this instance, I need to talk about both of them because they are very different pens despite being the same model. But let's start with the factory one here. This one is a shiny aluminum finish. It looks like it's just been machined, but and it may be raw aluminum that's just as exactly how it was after it came off of the machine. However, I've seen on some websites where it says that it's got a clear anodization over the aluminum, and that may be the case. I'm not sure. Whatever the case, though, it is an aluminum-bodied pen. It has a clip, a snap cap. It does not twist to come off. And I believe that the finials, these dark finials, are made out of brass or something like that. The clip too, and it's a decent clip. It's fairly springy. I like the shape. They look a lot like a Zeppelin, and that is the inspiration for the design. And because I'm somewhat irreverent, I call this one the Hindenburg before and after. Don't be offended by that. I'm sorry if you are, but anyway. These are different because this is the older version and this is the newer version, and they redesigned the cap and the capping mechanism, and so they act differently. But let me just show you here the way these are. They have a tapered section that is kind of a matte finished aluminum that is threaded into the barrel. And then they use a standard international type of converter. They're marked Diplomat. I believe they're made by Schmidt. And these Schmidt K5 converters are fantastic. They're kind of, to me, they're like the world standard for converters. They just do a wonderful job of drawing ink and performing. This one in particular has, I believe it's an 14 karat gold nib. which is two-tone. It's not as easy to see the two-tone, but there is a gold tone around the top, whereas the rest of it is silver, which, I don't know what kind of plating that is. And then the flower design, which is the Diplomat emblem or whatever, their symbol, which is also on the top of the caps. It's probably not as easy to see there, but there's that kind of that flower symbol from Diplomat. It's also repeated on the nib. But the way this one caps is there's a two-piece plastic insert down in there. The first one is just a sleeve, and I believe the reason it's there is so that you can safely post it, and then without metal touching metal. It'll be the aluminum of the barrel will be just touching that plastic sleeve on the inside, and it posts firmly and writes well. This is one of those pens that I feel I have no problem posting and writing with, even though you can write without it easily because of the length of the pen. And it snaps quite well. The plastic insert, the second one, which is farther up, acts as the seal around the nib and also grabs hold of this channel here on the section, so that is what you hear snapping. Is that it's engaging those teeth on the inside of that second plastic insert. But there is also, it's probably very hard to see here, but right there's a clear silicone O-ring, which also helps, I think, seal the pen and keep it from rattling, so that the metal parts here and the section don't hit against each other. Instead, there's an O-ring there that keeps that from happening. And if you find one of your pens of these starting to get a little bit loose and rattly there, you can replace that silicone O-ring, because I have. Actually, I didn't do it. I sent it to Jaffa and they did it for me. The newer version, it has a different type of insert, but this pen is different not only because of the capping mechanism, but because of the material it's made out of. It is a flame anodized stainless steel, and it is considerably heavier. This one weighs 42 grams, so it's fairly light. This one weighs 69 grams, which makes it a heavy pen. The difference is night and day. It's enormously heavy compared to that one. It weighs more than twice what it, well, no, not quite twice what it does, but it's heavy. Same deal where it unscrews. Same Schmidt K5 type converter. The stainless steel actually works on these threads a little smoother, and you can just spin it on. The sections are nearly identical. You can see there, they look very, very similar. There are some tiny, tiny, slight variations in the ends there, but they are very, very similar. The difference as far as the capping mechanism goes is on the inside. This one has a single insert, plastic insert, that fills the entire cap from about there. And when you put it in, there's this soft, almost rubbery feel with a little bit of resistance, and then a snap. I don't know what it is, but the sensation of capping this pen it has a satisfying feel to it. It's that soft, almost hydraulic lead up to the snapping that is quite, I don't know, it feels different from any other pen out there, and it is fantastic. And it's one of the reasons why I think that the older Aeros may not sell as well as the new ones, just because of that capping feel. I don't know. But also, another difference between these two particular pens is this one has the stainless steel nib, which is not two-tone, but it has the same markings with that little flower design on the nib. The nibs are made by Jowo, and therefore they're going to be reliable. But from what I understand, and I've heard this from several retailers, that Diplomat actually, they individually tune each of their nibs to make sure that they write properly. And I have yet to see and encounter a Diplomat that did not write flawlessly from the get-go. They are one of the better writing pens out there. If you want a pen that you can just purchase and use without any issues, this is a good pen to go with. Now, let's just look at some comparisons here. As I mentioned, this one weighs 42 grams and this one weighs 69. To give you an idea, and I didn't weigh this one before, but we'll do it real quickly here. If my scale will turn on. This is the Pilot Metro, which is made out of brass, but it's sheet brass that's formed. 25.1 grams. So you can see that this aluminum one at 42 is considerably heavier than the Metro, but they're still both fairly light. And for the size of the pen, I think it's, I don't know, it doesn't feel much heavier than that one, but this one really does feel heavier. To give you another idea, another fairly lightweight pen is the Lamy Safari, which is around 17 grams, super, super lightweight. Other pens that might be in the same kind of ballpark, this is a Kara's Vertex, which is also an aluminum-bodied pen. However, it doesn't have a metal section like this does, and therefore it weighs less. It's about 34 grams. Also a fairly lightweight aluminum pen. And then if you're going to get into heavyweight pens, it's hard to beat this massive Kara's ink, which is made out of solid bronze. And this one, yeah, it's a whopping 98 grams, a big heavy pen. So not quite as heavy as this one at about 69. So, and so you can see that these are fairly standard sized pens. They're just a hair longer than the Metro and about the same length as the Safari. The sections are kind of on the smallish side as far as thin. Not as thin as the Metro. And, you know, with the faceting on the Safari, it's hard to say if it's the same diameter or not. But let's look at the Kara's just for kicks here. The Kara's is just a tiny bit wider. But wherever you hold this pen, I tend to hold it about in the middle. And it's just fine. And because, and normally I don't like metal sections that can be slippery. This one can be slippery to my hands. But if your hands are even slightly moist at all, you'll grip it better. I find, though, that I don't typically have a hard time writing with this pen, like I might have with some others that have metal grips, because of that matte finish. So, now I need to talk about how these write. And let's go ahead and ink them up. And let's use some good German ink here. This is I'm not even going to pronounce it German. Rohrer and Klingner Salix. And sorry, my chair's squeaking. And let's use some Kaweco green, palm green. And so what you do is you place the section down in, and then turn get some more. I went back in with the piston there on that converter. Pulled up some ink. I like to get some of it off of there. And some people say is to force some out and then suck it back in to pull the excess out of the feed. That tends to work. And wipe it off good there. Now I already filled the flame with the Salix, which I did off camera, which is fine because it turns out that I'm almost out of Salix. The bottle's nearly empty, which is kind of a bummer. I like that ink. So let's see if I can turn our angle here a little bit. And I'm sorry I bumped this very old piece of furniture. It's kind of wobbly. So this is the Diplomat Aero, and this is in the factory finish. And the nib on this one is a medium 14K nib. The writing experience with this one is really stiff. It is a stiff, hard, but very smooth nib. It's a fairly wet writer. It is a perfectly satisfactory writing pen. You could write with it all day long. It's a workhorse pen. I've gone years with this thing inked up, where it always had ink in it. I was always using it. Fantastic pen. Works all day long. And then here's the Diplomat Aero Flame. And this one has a medium steel nib. And the difference is you can hear it more. I don't know if you're able to hear that on the camera or not. Sounds more pencil-like. It is also a smooth and fairly wet writer. Now, you have to understand, this ink, this Salix, is an iron gall ink and tends to be a bit drier, but not in this pen. It works perfectly well. Not extraordinarily wet, just perfectly the way it should. There is a little more of a bounce with the stainless nib. There's a little more of a give to it than with the 14 karat nib. I don't know why that is. There's almost no give at all with this 14 karat nib. It is a bit smoother and a bit wetter, but again, that may be because of the ink, because an iron gall ink does not tend to be as wet writing. And it's noisier. The steel is noisier, but there's a little bit of a give to it that makes it kind of a nice writing experience. Is it a flex pen? No. It's just they have a very different feel to them. So, Diplomat makes fantastic pens. If you are in the market for a decent, high-quality, machined metal pen, it's hard to beat the Aero. It is a fantastic pen. It is super well made, and has a good company behind it that has a long history of quality pen making, and they back up their pens very well. And Jaffa is the distributor for them, and Jaffa has been very good and very responsive to me. When I first got this pen, I did not like the way that the pen rattled in the cap. Even when I closed it, I would go like this and it would rattle. And so I sent it to them, even though I was not the original purchaser, and they knew that. They still serviced it, put a new O-ring in it, and sent it back to me with a new, and they even put a new converter in it for me because the old one was stained. I have no complaints. Jaffa is a great retailer, I think. Anyway, Diplomat pens, the Aero is a fantastic one, and I think it's the best of the ones that they make because I have used others that they have, and these are the ones I decided to purchase. Anyway, I hope you have a good day.